everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. I'm Shute Hardy, joined again by Jeff Robinson. Jeff, we've been looking at international rugby for the past few weeks, but let's keep it closer to our time zone, closer to North America, because we have now reached week 13 of 18 of the MLR regular season. And, we're definitely at the business end now. We're seeing teams really stake their claim for those playoff positions. Just looking at the different conferences at the moment, it is on a razor's edge in the Western Conference. We have Utah on top, Houston closely behind, 1 point difference, San Diego in third, LA, and then Seattle. LA just ahead of Seattle on points difference accumulated by bonus points. But to put that into context, Utah is first on 43 and Seattle is fifth on 33. So 10 points difference. If any of those teams were in the Eastern Conference, they would be challenging for second in that league. So New England, the defending champions, are on 45 points and at top of the Eastern Conference, followed by Chicago on 38, then Miami on 31, DC on 30, NOLA on 29, and to the surprise of no one, Anthem in last on 5 points and 0 wins. But Anthem also don't have any Canadian players, so no one cares about them. But we are interested in how Canadian players are doing. Jeff, what is your report on how the potential Canadian starters for their series this summer in Alberta?
I think things are looking good with the back row and the back three, really. I wrote down some names. Cole has had a very strong season and campaign for LA. Eves, Webster, Olsen. Now that Lesage is back, they're doing well with New England. Mason Flesh and Rumble are helping out with the back row. Ben in Utah, I believe, has done well. Kelly Martinez he's played both tight head and loose head for Washington, but he seems to be settling at loose head, and he's doing very well, and that's great. He's young. So that's one position in the tight five. And Steves seems to be getting more consistent game time in the business end of the season with New England. And he's at tight head with Quatrin at hooker. So that's kind of coming out. I always mispronounce his name. I just call him PVD, the lock for New England. He's been getting consistent game time for New England at lock. And so mostly those are the ones who have been doing very well, I think. For those who have not, and this is going to come in back to what I kind of said earlier about back row and back three, I think they're showing some depth and quality in their positions for Canada. But where have these guys gone? They're either getting only sporadic bench time or, are they injured? There's no information really out there. I have noticed Pryor seems to be getting a bit back to getting some game time, but off the bench. Justice Sears-Duru, he's rarely getting any game time ever since he scored that try in, I think, week 1 or week 2. Cole Keith is third choice tight head with New England right now. Caden Duguid and Cooper Coates and then Caleb Botchar are not getting much game time at all at NOLA. Only Matcham is, and I believe he's a loose head for Canada. Where I would get maybe most concerned is really with the tight five right now for Canada, for players getting quality game time. And in the center, Jones for Utah. He was a consistent starter, but I'm not sure if he got hurt. And Gabe Casey has not really featured at all for Utah. So centers is looking a bit thin for Canada right now. Meehan's going to have some tricky choices to make. I think there's definitely ways you can do it. Cole has played center before. You could move O'Leary at fullback like that if you want to get a starting lineup where players are at full speed. So it's really a mixed bag. I think the more speedster skill positions at, as I said, back row and back three, they're doing well. But the tight five is looking a bit underdone right now. Hopefully that changes still.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a mixed bag from the names you've given. I can see it from like the MLR team's perspective. They obviously want to get the best, starting 15 or matchday 23 ready to go. And while we know what the Canadians are capable of, it's also you're just competing against other guys on your team. Prove it. And if you have a bad week in training, or you have a little niggle that you don't want to aggravate, then you give another player that opportunity, and you also give them that chance to secure that starting position as well. It's a dangerous time. And then also on the completely biased and preferential Canadian side is like, yeah, of course we want the Canadians to have maximum game time as well. In fact, we want to take game time away from any of the USA starters so that when that qualifying game comes around, it'll be a completely dominant performance by Canada, and the USA will be scrambling to try and make it to the World Cup. It's almost like we're a Canadian rugby podcast or something. But, as in, there's still a fair few weeks of the MLR regular season. We also have the playoff structure, which allows 8 teams to make it and get, up to 3 more games, definitely at least 1 more. And historically, the team that has had the most Canadians goes on to win the championship and lift the MLR Shield. So, to all of our MLR head coaches and team owners and stuff like that, again, we repeat this every year, and it's consistent every year. Get Canadians in your starting lineup in your match day 23, and you'll be lifting the Shield by the end of the season. But to move slightly away from MLR, but still keeping on the topic of Canadian players that could be starting for those series of games in Alberta, we've got a couple of guys that are competing in the Shute Shield. Is that correct?
Yes, both on the same team, Southern Districts. I believe they're still a third at the bottom of the table, unfortunately. But Sam Miller, a loosehead, I think has started every game since week 3. So that's good. I'm talking about depth. We already mentioned Type 5. There's one. And I purposely mentioned O'Leary at fullback with maybe Cole at center like that, where he's played before, because Belaski has started 5 of their 6 games at fly half, and he has scored, I believe, 3 tries and has numerous conversions. So hopefully he's getting up to speed too at that level of competition. So potentially Meehan does have some options there.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously the things we want to see. We want to see Canadian players excelling regardless of which league structure they're in. Obviously, everyone wants to be in the Premiership, the URC, the top 14. But, obviously there's things that restrict international players coming into those teams. So then you're up against, capped All Blacks and Springboks and stuff like that. And then it's a bit more of a challenge to break in. But obviously, like the Shute Shield, that's nothing to shy about. That's definitely a very competitive competition in Australia. And especially having guys signing up like fly half, game in, game out, that is a great opportunity for them to come into the Canadian national team and prove that they've got the ability to be there. Now, I've mentioned in passing there the top 14, and because we know for the past few years there's a number of Canadians in the top 14 that have opted not to play for Canada despite being previously capped. We're now going to mention a player that has not been capped by Canada for a very specific reason. So Tyler Duguid has been playing for Montpellier since 2020. I think he joined their academy as Espoir and then got promoted to the main team in 2022. So he has been in France for now coming up to 5 years. And under French selection policy, even though it was previously 3 years and then 5 years, it's also if you have a Canadian passport that a French passport is if you'll make it into the squad. And from the rumors that have been circulating, it seems as though that passport is definitely in Duguid's travel bag, because the rumors are spreading that he is going to be joining France on their tour to New Zealand this summer. What do you make of this, Jeff?
It's very possible from what I have been told. They've got their paperwork in order. They've even assigned, the French Rugby Union has assigned a staffer to help him get that citizenship and that passport in order so he can make the trip. They might not get it in time for that trip to New Zealand, but it's most likely going to happen this year, if not this summer. Yes, when I've been told, while he would love to put on the red jersey, he wants to play at the best, at the top level against the best, which is fair for him. You cannot blame him for that. You cannot. He is a motivated player. He's trying to get to the top. You cannot disparage him for that. And there are also, due to contract stuff with the French Rugby Union, with the top 14, financial aspects to this decision. Again, these players have a finite amount of time to
That is true.
make
That is true.
bang for their buck. And would you make that decision? Would I make that decision? We probably would go the same route. You have to be realistic in that regard too. And so I'm not going to put any blame on his feet at all. I mean, I understand his decisions. I understand the temptation of all of it. I mean, he could go to the next World Cup in 2027 for Le Bleu, and they could be in the championship game, and that's every player's dream. But from what I've heard is he's got his paperwork in order. They're just processing it now, and most likely it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on there, Jeff. I think if you have the opportunity to play in the most financially rewarding league of rugby on the planet, and then you have the opportunity to secure your spot in that league for the rest of your career, by not only getting citizenship, but by playing for the national side, absolutely go for it. The cost of paperwork and all that stuff is minuscule compared to getting those opportunities that, very, very few players outside of France in this case get. And I know that his position is also one that is closely sought after within the French team. There's a lot of competition for it, but, injuries happen. Players can become unavailable for a multitude of reasons. If you have the chance, as I said before, to get in and then make your best case to secure your spot in the team, whether that is an MLR team or a national team, you have to go and you have to take it. Now, because of World Rugby's rules regarding national competition, it may be that, 2027, we have Tyler Duguid playing for France. And then after that tournament, he gets told, thanks for all you've done. However, we've got 5 other players that are, younger than you, and we want to make sure they get the opportunity, so we're going to put them ahead of you. Okay, 3 years down the line, he can switch his affiliation back to Canada, and he can compete in another World Cup. He'll be, I think he'll be probably 31 by the time of the World Cup in the USA.
I think he's on 25 now.
I believe he was 20 when he went to France. So he'll be 20. Yeah, he's 24, 25 at the moment. But this is why I don't work for the French Rugby Union, because I would already have this information available to me, and clearly I haven't kept it in mind. But because of the way that the national affiliation works now, he still has the opportunity to play for Canada towards the end of his career if he does choose to commit to France. Yeah, and
I mean, that brings up...
And I think as well is that, we've on this podcast for the past half a decade have been saying, these are the issues with Rugby Canada at the moment. Kingsley Jones, not a good choice. Keeping him around, an even worse choice. The facilities, it's not even comparable. I fully agree with Tyler. If he wants to play for France, if he wants to play in the best environment, if he wants to have the best coaches available to him, no competition whatsoever. And I know a few episodes ago I was talking about high performance facilities that are going to be emerging in Canada, and there's going to be a minimum of 4 hopefully by the end of the year, 8 by the end of 2029. But still, that's in 4 years time? 4 years just to get your shoelaces on. How many laps have France run by the time Canada is ready to go with all these 8 high performance centers? It's yes, we will hopefully, knock on wood, get those facilities set up in Canada that it is a high performance rugby environment. But it's not going to be today. It's not going to be tomorrow. You got to use what's available to you.
Will it be in 4 years too? Will it? That's
I guess it's also dependent on how well the women do in the Women's Rugby World Cup, because that's what all the timelines are based upon at the moment. But I guess that's a case of we'll just have to wait and see. And yeah, I think it is a shame that Tyler won't be wearing the maple leaf red jersey anytime soon, but I can't really argue against it.
But this also brings up another real something I've never liked about World Rugby. I understand like a 3-year stand down if a player has played like 50 caps for the country like that. Let's just say Tyler played 50 caps for France and then doing a 3-year stand down. But if I'll just use him because we're talking about him, but if he only gets one cap, I think that's still kind of, there should be like a 1 or 3 cap minimum where it can still go a one-time down, like from tier 1 to tier 2 country like that. Not opposite though. But that's my gripe of the day. I've always thought that because I've always followed that with New Zealand and the Polynesian, Tonga, Fiji.
I get that
situation.
as well. But I also say you're right. That's a issue with World Rugby, not with like any player that's using this to their benefit. I mean, all power to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, that was just
all right.
An
well,
example.
I understand. It's just an example, and hopefully within after he gets his 50 caps for France, he decides to take 3 years and come play for Canada. Just in the twilight of his career, maybe he already has a Webb Ellis Trophy under his belt by that time. We will see. But anyway, I think we've been speaking a lot of like men's rugby at the moment. I think our attention should turn to women's rugby. We're going to keep it in Europe as a whole for now because the women's under-20s have been in a friendly series with Ireland's under-20s. This has been organised since, I believe, early this year or late last year, and it's part of a 2-match series. I believe it's the Raymond James series as well. So there's 28 players on this tour, and I think all of them basically play in these games because there's not a restriction on substitution and stuff. Again, these are friendlies. This isn't a mandated competition by World Rugby. It's not like the Transatlantic Quad Series, which hopefully should be happening again later this year. We'll let you know if it does. But anyway, so this was the first of 2 friendlies, and unfortunately we don't have that much information on it, so we're just going to go over it briefly because all Rugby Canada provided us with was the halftime score and then the full-time score. So at halftime, Canada were leading 7-5, and at full time, it was a Canadian women's rugby victory, 26-15. They do provide a bit of the try scorers name. So Brooke Rodham offloaded the ball to Ava Ferentz to set up the first try and scored a try shortly after. But while Canada did get the conversion, Ireland were unable to, hence 7-5 at half time. Then we had Amber Edgerton getting the ball down in the first and second half with Rodham kicking the conversion. Ireland then scored their second try of the match, and then we had Fiona Day scoring out wide, the only Canadian try not to be converted. And then late in the game, Alice intercepted an Irish pass to score and dish the ball off to Ivy Putka. Underneath the post, by this time, Charlotte Hilton had come on and she had scored the try. Then Ireland scored just before the final whistle to get us to that 2015 victory. Personally, I wish there was more information, any potential highlights we could see, but it is what it is. The second and final friendly will be on the 17th of May. That will be at the IRFU High Performance Center, 1 p.m. local time kickoff, so that's 8 a.m. Eastern, 5 a.m. Pacific. And again, only the halftime and full-time scores will be posted on Rugby Canada's social media. But hey, a win is a win, and congratulations to the Canadian Under-20s women's team.
Congratulations.
All right, and now we are going to go all the way from Europe to Australia because we had the second match of the Pacific 4 series, which was Australia versus New Zealand. Now, Jeff, you were telling me that you stayed up late to watch this game, and, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone. The Black Ferns totally dominated this game. What were your insights into it?
Speaking of what I said before about Canada, with the one time the USA got into their half, the USA scored, that New Zealand was seen to be doing that almost at will at times against Australia. So tightening up on the D will be very important to them. I thought the New Zealand attack was, for the most part, quite electric, and their ability to recycle the ball and get back on the front foot was very good. They did very well in the scrums. Lineouts were still pretty good. Still think, because I would imagine Canada will probably be starting more closer to their full strength team, especially in the forwards. I think Canada might still have the edge on them a bit in the forwards, but their backs are going to have to be really up for that because their back line, even without the Woodman, it was electric. And I was starting to wonder where will she come in at too. I guess that they're talking about her at 13, but they're on fire in the back line, so Canada's going to have their A game on D.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's an important thing to keep in mind because it's going to be New Zealand versus Canada is the next game coming up. You know, New Zealand, they only get a 1 week turnaround. Canada, they went to LA to support the women's sevens team and the men's sevens team as well, I should say, in their bid for the newfangled Sevens series for 2026. But my guess as well is they were also picking up a number of Sevens players as well to take on the plane to head to New Zealand. So they've had a bit of time to get acclimatized and should be a really interesting game. Obviously, as you said, much stronger side than who we had against the United States. I think as well, New Zealand will probably be pulling out their big guns as well, but they only have a week to come to terms with who's going to be starting. Ultimately, I think it's always going to be the game that defines the tournament of who's going to win it. And Australia, USA is always going to be who's fighting for bronze at this point. But an interesting thing that I found out is that in the Women's Six Nations, for the past number of years, the schedule has been formatted specifically so that England versus France is always on the final week of fixtures. So it's always on the Women's Rugby Super Saturday, because those are, on paper, the two strongest teams in the Women's Six Nations. In reality, it's the strongest team in women's rugby and France. So the thing that I'm inquiring about is, whilst we have this disparity between the four teams that are taking part in the Pacific Four Series, should the final fixture, or the final weekend, I should say, of the Pacific Four Series feature as standard Canada versus New Zealand, just so it's the big prize finish, I should say?
Both, I think, did that happen last year? I'm trying to
Yes,
remember if it happened last year. Yeah. I mean, maybe they decided to switch it around. But I can imagine both teams would probably agree with you. I mean, Australia would be, on paper, a little bit easier match to come into after the long travel for Canada. And New Zealand gets one more match to get the rust off before playing Canada with the USA. And yeah, I could see both teams being very happy with that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm hoping that in the future there can be the potential to maybe add more women's teams, so it basically becomes the Pacific version of the Women's Six Nations, and then we have a more standardized form of competition. At the same time, I would just like Australia to be a bit stronger. The USA, they can be a little bit low. That's fine by me. But at least I think in the same way of how a lot of people predicted that, you know, the Black Ferns are just going to walk this series every single year because New Zealand was so far ahead of Canada. And then Canada were able to not only beat the Black Ferns, but beat them at home and then show like, hey, it's not just them. We're also in this and we're also super competitive as well. I would really like to see, you know, the whole sense of rising tides lift all boats kind of thing. I'm eager to see the USA and Australia be able to challenge for the Pacific Four Series sooner rather than later. But yeah, I fully agree. Like in the meantime, New Zealand versus Canada be the final match in the final round as well. Like that's the crowning moment. That's the championship decider. That's what we should go for now. And, you know, maybe it's because I'm a little biased. Maybe it's because we do a Canadian rugby podcast. Who knows? But if you are looking to watch that New Zealand versus Canada game, I have some good news for you because it is available on TSN. To be specific of which channel, we will let you know as soon as it becomes available to us. Keep an eye out on our social media accounts. As we mentioned earlier at the start of this podcast, we've been talking about MLR. If you want to watch any MLR games, you can do so on the Rugby Network for free. It's free to sign up and then free to watch the games in Canada. If you're looking to watch any of the final rounds of the Premiership or URC, that is available on Sportsnet Plus. And if you're looking for the Champions and Challenge Cup final, which is set to take place in 2 weeks' time, that'll be on epcrugby.tv. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to check out more as well as our written pieces on our website, therougerugby.ca. You can also find our podcast on Spotify, and we have our YouTube channel at The Rouge Rugby. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell notification to stay up to date with all our videos. We're also available across social media, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and Blue Sky, all at The Rouge Rugby. Jeff, where can people find you on social media?
On X at UPRugbyJeff.
Find me across social media at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. Well, that's where we're going to end this episode. Jeff, thank you for joining me, and thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rouge Rugby Podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.